when I was at the NAI, my mentor was really close with John Wooden. So I was at the NAI, the Master's College in Bill Oates. He would go with John Wooden to breakfast maybe once every 2 weeks to breakfast. So every year I'm like, Coach, let us go. I would get a chance to go sit with John Wooden maybe once or twice a year in the 8 years that I was with him. And I asked the question to John Wooden. I asked him, what are some of the things he looks for with recruiting, and and some of the, I would ask him some of those things, and had an opportunity to hear some of that stuff. It was interesting, some of the things, and we can get into some of the personal things, but when you talk about some of the physical attributes, one thing that stood out to me, it just blew me away. He's like, yeah, you look for good character and just all those things. He told me, he said, man, one of the things, this is for more of a coach, for a coach's eye, and I'll talk about from a student perspective, if you're a student athlete, but from a coach's eye, man, John Wooden told me, he said he looks for quickness. And I was like, it literally blew me away when he said quickness. And that quickness can mask a lot. Like, it's great. He said, you look for a great shooter. Well, all he can do is shoot. And it's like, well, Ray Charles, he was blind and he can play music and sing, right? So, he was great at what he did. But when John Wooden said quickness, he gone on to explain what he meant by that quickness. That's something that you can't teach. Of course, you can't teach height and all those things, but if you're looking for a certain position, and you look for a big slow guy or a big quick guy, of course you want the quick guy, but what quickness brings is the ability to be able to execute and move and perform, to be able to react a little bit quicker. Yeah, we look at a player like Luka Doncic, right? And we see his ability to play slow and perform slow, but still there's a level of reaction that has some quickness to it. And even if you play slow, can you react quick? And I think that was the explanation that, as we kind of broke it down, that I got from John Wooden. And as I go out, when I recruit, and I'm talking from a coach, when you talk about a coach, some of the things I look for, and no, I don't mind a player who's not as quick, but if the majority of my team is quick, there's a lot of things that you can do with that,
For sure.
Aside from shooting, aside from all of that quickness right there, and you look at some of the best teams and the performers, you look at some of the guys who are the hardest to play against, and most of them have quickness. And you look at if you look at basketball and football or whatever sport it is, you look at some of the guys that have some of the most dominating performances, and the level of quickness comes in. Not to say that those guys are special, Luka Doncic, all those guys are special. That, I like, one of my favorite players to watch is, he plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, like Kyle Anderson. He plays slow. They call him slow-mo. But you see, he stands out. His IQ and his skill set is at such a high level that the quickness isn't a factor. But you got to be that skilled. You got to be that. Your IQ has to be on point, like Luka Doncic, like Kyle Anderson, like some of those guys that can play slow. I think that's important in terms of quickness and reaction, being able to react and move quick. I think that's something that I look at. And if there's a deficiency that a student athlete has, I still say, you know what? I feel like we can develop the skill to match the quickness. Sometimes if you see a skill and say, well, he has a skill and he may not be as quick, he may not be able to move as well. I go over the person who can move well, and I'll teach them the skill. If it looks like they're coachable in that regard. And of course, all the other attributes that you want. But that was interesting. So that's why I mentioned that I heard that from John Wooden. Yeah. That came out of his mouth. Like, right, that's the first thing. I'm thinking, he's going to write down a list, right? And yeah, he did have a list of all those things, coachable, being able to shoot, some skills that were important to him. But when he spoke to me, because I told him, I said, hey, I'm a recruiting coordinator. What's one thing you look for? And he said quickness. And I was like, what where are you coming? You know, and ever since then, I've had to learn why he would say that, why that would be the first thing out of his mouth to me. Now he may have highlighted some other things to someone else, but when he said that to me, I intentionally was thinking, what would he mean by that? And now, as I develop teams, I see how important that quickness is. And I've always kind of been right with a little, with recruiting in that regard. So that's one aspect. So okay. Yeah, that's something that stands out when you talk about recruiting, and a nugget that I got from one of the greats.